Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, today I got to make up a couple more tinctures slash extracts. Just remember, all tinctures are extracts, though not all extracts are tinctures. Typically, I call them all one or the other because they're pretty much the same thing. A lot of it depends on the type of alcohol you're using and so many other things, and it can get confusing. But the truth is, I don't think it matters. What matters is what's going to work best for you. And so the main purpose of me doing this video today, even though I have a lot of tincture and extract related videos, is just to show you how easy it is. I don't use special weights and measurements and all that kind of stuff. I just do what works for me, and oftentimes just make things up as I go. In fact, the two I'm making today, I just decided I'm going to do this today. Before I do that, let me tell you real quickly, if you're new to making extracts, be it medicinal or for flavoring, the solvent is all about what you're using to extract the flavorings or the medicinal properties of whatever it is you're extracting. So today I'm going to be using nothing but homemade wine. A lot of people usually fall back to vodka because there's no flavor. It's fairly cheap to buy, but you can use whatever you have on hand. You know, an 80 proof and above alcohol can be really good, make a real strong tincture. You don't need to take as much of it. So it doesn't have to be vodka. It can be rum. It could be whiskey. It could be tequila. You can use, some people like to use Everclear. That's not my personal choice and personally don't recommend it, but some people do that. The higher proof the alcohol is, typically the less you need. A lot of people think the higher proof alcohol just has a better shelf life. I have not found any difference in using homemade wine or vinegar to make an extract as I have using a higher proof alcohol. And I've had extracts sitting for years and years with these things. You can also make alcohol-free extracts, such as for kids in particular, you might want to use something like 3 parts food grade glycerin to 1 part water. The water is necessary to reduce the viscosity of the glycerin for a better extract. Or for kids that are at least a year old or any adult that doesn't want to have any alcohol, you can make an oxymil by doing a 50-50 blend of raw honey and vinegar, preferably homemade vinegar, but even a store-bought apple cider vinegar, as long as it's real apple cider vinegar, not that fake colored stuff, that can make a good extract too. Now, for those avoiding alcohol altogether. The reason I like to use my homemade wine is that not only is it going to preserve well, it's going to taste better than vinegar. It's virtually free because it's made from my own fruit and I know exactly what's in it. Yes, you can use store-bought wine, but just keep in mind store-bought wine has additives in it like clarifiers and whatnot, and some of them, especially if you're vegan, sometimes it's egg that's used as a clarifier. Sometimes it's other things that you'd probably rather not have in your diet. So a homemade wine to me is going to be preferable for both the price and the fact that I know exactly what's in it. Now, then you're going to have well, how much do I put in there? How do I do it? It's so easy. Now, the more material you put in there, the stronger your extract's going to be, no matter what solvent you use. But just keep in mind, the more material you're going to use, the less actual liquid you're going to have in the end to strain out. So what I'm doing today is I've made mullein extracts before, and I'm finding it is helping Pat with his lungs, with the issues he's had with his lungs for many years, breathing in all kinds of things. You know, yeah, he's worked doing water treatment and all kinds of stuff, and it's starting to begin to take a toll on his lungs. And so the mullein has been very helpful. And so I've made just plain mullein extract. Today I'm going to use a blend of mullein and usnea that we gathered from our other piece of property. So I'm going to do about a 50-50 blend, and I want to fill my jar up. Whenever I make extracts, I typically, depending on the density of the material I'm putting in there, I typically fill my jar about halfway full. So usnea is also known as old man's beard. You can find it growing on trees. And by the way, I have videos on the benefits of both usnea and mullein that you can research. In fact, I'll link to both of those down below. I'm going to put a little bit more mullein. See, I'm not measuring specifically. I'm just eyeballing it, and the jar is more than halfway full. But that usnea can be a little bit fluffy. And now I'm just going to take my homemade wine and pour that right over the top. And I find more recently I really like using these recycled green olive jars better for making my extracts than a standard canning jar. The canning jar, especially when you're using the metal band, if you're leaving it back there and letting it extract for a period of time, sometimes that band can rust a little bit and it can stick and make it hard to get off the jar, where the lug lids come off a lot easier. Now typically what I'll do is I'll use a chopstick and kind of push everything down in there and stir it up a little bit, because I know I'm going to want to add more, especially that mullein. It likes to sit right on the top and kind of float above the liquid. Then I'll add some more of the wine. And at this point, I tend to stir it up a little bit more, trying to get it all down in there. And then I'm going to add my lid, and yes, I got a mess down here. Put my lid on, put it on nice and tight, and then I like to shake it to really get it mixed in there good. Okay, we'll set that one aside. Okay, for my next extract, this one is going to be a valerian root extract that I'm also making for Patrick. So I have a separate recipe where I use valerian root with a blend of other herbs that I use for myself. It's one I use to help with sleep. Mostly I use it when I'm really stressed out. My muscles get really tight and sore, especially in my shoulders. It really does help to relax the muscles. And but know that when you're using valerian root, it can be very, very powerful. And some people are going to be really sensitive to it. It may cause you to have very vivid dreams. That may or may not be an enjoyable experience. And the other thing I use valerian in is the leaves. So when the leaves start coming on my valerian plants, I'll start gathering them and dehydrating them up. And those, because they have the same properties as the root, but just aren't as potent, I like to use that in my standard pain remedy extract, which I use feverfew and catmint in as well, and some echinacea leaves. I'll link to that recipe down below, as well as the deep sleep extract recipe. This one's going to be different because I'm going to see, I think Patrick needs something a little bit more powerful, so I'm going to use the root alone. I'm going to put a lot in here. And the thing is even if it's pretty powerful, you can always just try taking a couple drops and see if that's enough, especially if you're making it with a higher proof alcohol than the wine that I'm using. So I'm actually going to fill this jar up just about halfway with the root. Also keep in mind, if you've never worked with valerian, the root in particular, it has a very strong and not very pleasant smell. Actually, I'm not going to go quite halfway full because it is so strong. I don't think I need to fill it up even halfway full. And it is pretty dense in the way it sits in here. There's not a whole lot of airspace. So again, this is how I do it. I just eyeball it. Some people are against that. You do what you think is best. I just want people to realize how easy it is, and the methods I use have worked great for us. Top it off with the homemade wine. And this one won't require so much stirring. So yeah, the root, because it's a little heavier and more dense, it doesn't float the way the mullein leaves do. So I don't have to worry so much about stirring that down and then adding more. But you can still come back and check these things, because they're going to absorb some of the liquid. And if it then leaves more space, you can add more of your solvent to the top. Same thing, I'm going to put the lid on and I'm going to shake it up really well. Obviously, I'll want to make sure that I mark these and date them so I know how long they have been sitting here. So, well, not here. I'm going to put them back in my cabinet. Usually I like to leave them out for a few days so I can at least shake them up several times before, maybe a week or two. Then I'll put them back in my cabinet and let them sit for a couple months. Now, the standard for me, some people say 4 weeks, some people say 6 weeks, some people say 8 weeks. Some of it's going to depend on what it is you're extracting. I always just go for a standard of 2 months. And if it sits back there for many more months after that until I need it, that's fine too. I'm not worried about it. It's because I'm using things that I know are going to be shelf stable. It'll be fine until I need it. And oftentimes it'll be even stronger by simply leaving it. Then the next question people are going to ask, well, what is the dosage? Though there's many naturopaths and herbalists, people who may have certifications or licenses in healthcare, they might give you specific dosages, but the truth is, it's going to vary per person. I don't give specific dosages. What I always say is start small. So if you are having a hard time sleeping and you're making a tincture, an extract like this with a lot of valerian root, I'd start with just a couple of drops. Then if that doesn't do you any good, then try going up to maybe a half teaspoon, then up to a tablespoon, and start from there. Because there's various things you may not know. You may not know if you're going to have a reaction to that particular herb, even after doing all your research for yourself. Because that's the other thing, that personal responsibility I'm always talking about. You got to make sure that you're not going to have, if you're already on some medications, you need to research and find out if there's any herbs that are going to interact with that particular medication. In most cases, it's going to intensify it, which means it's doing what it needs to do, and then the medication is an extra, so you're ending up with too much of these things doing the same thing in your body. But sometimes they can really contradict each other as well. So always learn about that for yourself. I'm not going to know all the details on what's best for you. You've got to do your own research. And then, obviously find out whether or not it's something you're allergic to. And if you don't know, starting with a couple of drops, you're going to learn. Then you're going to find out that, okay, I'm allergic to that, obviously, so you're not going to take anymore. But if it's not working for you with just a couple of drops, then you just keep increasing your dosage each time you try using it until you find the amount that works for you. There can be amount of any one thing that can be too much. It's going to also depend on the herb and the solvent used. There's so many variables in this, but you can learn as you go. It doesn't have to be difficult to get started. It is super easy to just get started. A lot of people are scared. They don't know where to start. They don't know how to start. Just do it. That's what I did. I just said, you know what? I'm going to try this. Boop, 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 and started mixing stuff. And then, the feverfew extract I made the first time, it worked good, but it tasted terrible. So I kept making changes through the years and kept trying it a different way until I found a recipe that I really like for me, and it works good for me. And Patrick, it works for him, not as good as it does for me, but it does work for him if he really needs, if he's getting a headache. Usually if it's like a more mild headache or something like that, it'll work fine for him. But also know that valerian, because it is so strong, it is a sedative, and it can because of that, it's very good for helping to relieve all kinds of pain. Anyway, so that's mostly what I wanted to share, is just encourage people just to do it. Just get started. Don't worry about getting all the specific details as far as, exactly how much has got to be in there and exactly what kind of solvent you want to use. Find what you think is going to work best for you and just go with it. You can always start by making smaller amounts than this at a time. You don't have to make massive amounts and then find out it's not going to work, or nobody in your family can use it. Start by making small amounts and then work your way up. That's the best way to learn what's best for you, because any one of us who've been doing this for a while can say, well, this is what I do. And you may do it and it may not work for you, or it may be totally contradictory to what you need. And I don't care how skilled or how educated or how certified any one person is, they can give you suggestions. It doesn't mean you have to stick exactly to that. In fact, a lot of times when I come up with recipes of any kind, I might see somebody's recipe and go, oh, that's interesting. That's a new little twist I hadn't thought about. I'm going to do that, plus I'm going to do this, or I'm going to take out that and add this instead. You can tailor anything to suit you, and it doesn't have to go strictly by the book. This is my personal opinion. Everybody's going to have a different opinion on this, but this is just based on my own experience. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and you find it encouraging to at least, if nothing else, get started. Get yourself some good herb books. I always recommend Amy Fields' book, but there's many other great herb books out there. I also recommend finding an herb book that's specific to your location, such as there is a great one that's specifically for people who live in Australia. For here in the United States, there are ones that are Pacific Northwest, there's Southwest, and more, and it's broken up into these different regions. And that is based on medicinal herbs that are already growing around you, so you can learn more about those herbs, what's available to you, and what they're good for. And by the way, don't forget to share some of your favorite ways to make your extracts, your favorite solvents to use, your favorite herbs to extract. Share with us in comments down below so people can learn from you as well. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.